Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Boxing Repeats review show. Today we are looking at Fight Camp Week 2. Glad to be joined today by Elliot and Greg. Elliot and Greg, how are you doing, guys? You good?
All good, mate. All good.
All good, mate. Thank you.
Good. So what we're going to be looking at today then, as I quickly mentioned in the title there, is Matchroom and DAZN's Fight Camp Week 2 that we've just had, headlined by Kid Galahad and Jazza Dickens. But before we get to that, we're going to go in just a quick production note. Off camera, we talked about how DAZN have said game changed and all that sort of stuff. Elliot, after week 1, you gave us a little insight to the production value of week 1. Was there anything in week 2 that you were seeing? Was it positive? Was it change? Was better? Was worse? How are you seeing it as a whole package?
Yeah, so I still enjoyed the coverage. I think it's still mostly good. I think the change of personnel is really good. I think the only thing I would say is that obviously, as we said off camera, like DAZN's kind of slogan for the past couple of weeks has been game changed, and I haven't seen as many kind of drastic changes from the Sky coverage that I was kind of expecting. All being said, that maybe those are being held back for the arena shows. So yeah, maybe I'm missing a couple of things. Maybe there's a limit to what you can do with post-fight interviews or backstage footage. And I'm aware they're pumping up lots of content at the moment, which I've not had the chance to look at yet. Maybe that's what they're referring to. But in terms of kind of the actual fight night experience, I haven't seen too many kind of drastic changes from kind of a standard Sky show as of yet. Those could be to come.
Greg, how are you feeling like the personnel, the mix? So we've got lots of people in there. You've got Maya Jama heading it up. You've got Laura Woods doing stuff backstage and ringside. You've got Andy Lee, Chris Lloyd, Darren Barker. There's loads of it's quite a mix of people. How are you feeling the mix of people? Is there anyone in particular that you're enjoying listening to as well?
Yeah, mate, just to touch as well on what Elliot said, I do think it's very similar to the Sky setup. I was actually thinking that last night when I looked at it in the interview process, etc. But I'm enjoying it. I would listen to Andy Lee narrating somebody's life, never mind boxing. So I enjoy listening to Andy Lee. Darren Barker's very good. The rest of the guys are doing a good job. But I would say that those two, but especially Andy Lee, I could listen to Andy Lee all day. He's so knowledgeable.
Yeah, true. And for what it's worth, I know that Dylan White took a bit of slack online for his bucket hat, but I was a fan. I genuinely like the bucket hat. Nothing wrong with it for me. Also, just as a random production note, Mike Costello of 5 Live and the boxing podcast, Costello and Bunce and all that good stuff, he's obviously in Tokyo at the moment, but I think he's coming back to be sort of chief commentator. So that'll be a change as well. All right, so on to the actual evening then. We're going to look at today, very briefly, the 3 sort of main fights, the 3 fights that headed up the card. So starting off with the war, pretty much. It's kind of a one-sided war, but the war between Babic and Bennett. Greg, over to you. First impressions. You must have enjoyed it. What were you thinking when you watched it?
You know, it was the best fight of the night, whether you like Alan Babic or you rate him, like you're glued when he fights. It's absolutely crazy. It's bizarre, like the way the fights go. It's just like standing outside a pub and 2 guys just absolutely start lamping each other. It's crazy. I really enjoyed the fight. What I take from it, and I hate to sound negative, is I just feel that Alan Babic's next step, he's going to get his head jabbed off, and I think he's going to get beat quite convincingly. A big massive props to Mark Bennett for last night. I thought some of the shots that the guy took, but in saying that, I think I read he was 60 pounds heavier. I think Alan Babic is a bridgerweight, maybe even cruiserweight maximum, but he's not a heavyweight, he's too small. But you know what? He gets in there, he throws lots of hard shots, and you're glued. And is that not why we watch boxing? Yeah, we like the technical guys, we like the guys who can end a fight with one shot, but you want action at the end of the day, and you know, hats off to Alan Babic, he delivers that.
Elliot, watching Babic, and he's obviously like a good feeling fighter and stuff like that. On that point about weight and size and stuff like that, is he too small to be a heavyweight in your opinion?
Yeah, I'd agree with Greg. when you compare him against the big boys of the division, he is too small. However, when he's against kind of limited opponents or the smaller heavyweights, he's going to have some success. But yeah, so I think he is. I think bridgerweight or cruiserweight, I think he could have some success, but is he going to be as entertaining? Are people going to be as fussed about seeing him if he's fighting cruiserweight? Quite possibly not. And I think now he's put himself in a position where he's fought a big heavyweight in Mark Bennett. As we said, there was a big weight difference. If he fights someone who's 200 pounds in his next fight, are people going to tune it? As many people going to tune in? Quite possibly not. So we'll see. I think regardless of what weight class he should be in, I think he will continue to fight at heavyweight.
Speaking of continuing to fight, then Elliot, we'll stick with you for continuing to fight at heavyweight. Where does he go next? I mean, it feels like he's on our domestic scene, but obviously, I've forgotten where he's from. He's not originally from Britain, is he? But
yeah.
So he feels like he's on our domestic scene. So is there like domestic fights here for him? Where do you see him going from this?
It's an interesting one because you don't know how. It feels like he is being matched fairly slowly, if I'm honest, because some of his wins have been impressive, but he's not, in my opinion, taken a huge step up from those wins. In terms of domestic fights, I saw a post, you might laugh, on Instagram last night from Dave Allen, who's making his comeback in a couple of weeks. And I think he just said it's a matter of time before that fight happens. Mm. So that's one for you, maybe before the end of the year. Apart from that, I'm not sure. I know he's kind of good friends with Fabio, in the same stable as Fabio Wardley, who's the English champion. But no, I think what's most likely is he'll fight fighters on the level of Mark Bennett, Tom Little for his next couple of fights, and then maybe the Dave Allen fight could happen. But I think that's a big maybe at the moment.
Greg, it's probably hard to tell at the moment because we haven't seen Babic really step up, and we haven't really seen a lot of a technical display from him. But do you have any feeling or idea where you think his ceiling might be in terms of level and career goals?
I think it's Doey. I think it's just going to be a big guy that is able to box a bit that's going to beat him, and I don't mean that disrespectfully at all. Like, see if he's going to be a heavyweight and we have to take him serious. Cool, Liverpool show. Throw him in with David Price. See how it goes. If he's going to be a heavyweight, go for it. You can't just choose to fight medium-sized heavyweights. If you want to be a heavyweight and you say, like Alan Babic says, yeah, I'll fight anyone. I'm a heavyweight. Don't tell me I'm too small. Cool. David Price is looking for a fight. Throw him in Liverpool. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's a good point. And do you see Babic coming out of that realistically? Like with a win, obviously?
So this is the bit where I look daft now. Do you know what wouldn't surprise me? It actually wouldn't surprise me. And the only reason being is because David Price has a hard career. He's been chinned a few times. But I also know that David Price is the kind of guy that one shot could end it. So I'll be greatly honest. And I think that's a 50-50 fight. Honest. That's as honest I can be.
And we've all heard it so many times from pros and in interviews that David Price really punches. And that might be the sort of test that Babic needs, because he's never really been hit, does he? And so, yeah, interesting one to see where his direction goes. Personally, I'd be quite interested to see Babic versus Dave Allen. That sounds like a bit of fun. Just sounds like build-up could be a good laugh. Just sounds like it could be interesting. So, all right, skipping on to the next heavyweight fight then. He's had a brief mention in here, Fabio Wardley and Nick Webb. Short fight, didn't really see it happening that way. Greg, you did see, obviously, the win come in. Tell us, before the fight, what did you see in Wardley that panned out? What did you think, yeah, that's what he's going to do, and that's what he did? What did you see?
He's too fast, though, and his combinations are too much for a guy like Nick Webb, who has that kind of Audley Harrison standoff and let me think style. Did I think it would end in one round? No. I actually thought maybe round about the middle stages. I just thought it would take over. But Nick Webb, I don't know if you guys really caught it, but Nick Webb looked to have a little bit of success against Fabio Wardley last night. There was a couple of times I was like, oh, that's a bit interesting, but the minute Wardley started throwing fast, hard shots, Nick Webb just couldn't live with it. So, Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, mate. That was my prediction video this week with one of them. I did see it coming, but just not that early, I have to be really honest.
Because I wasn't particularly impressed, not being critical, with Wardley against Molina. I just thought he made it look quite a difficult fight. And I wondered if Nick Webb would get to him. So those first 2 minutes, spoiler alert, Nick Webb sort of dominates the first couple of minutes, and then Wardley gets the win in the following 40-odd seconds. I just thought it was going to be... I just thought Webb might get to him. And it looked that way, and obviously Wardley comes back and swinging. Eliot, in commentary, they said a lot that Wardley is dangerous when he's hurt. Do you think that's a safe trait to carry as a heavyweight?
Yeah, I think as you go up in levels, which I think Fabio Wardley will do over the next year or so. Yeah, it's not ideal because if you get hit too hard, then you might not be punching back. So yeah, it's a strange one with Fabio Wardley because I think he's a good fighter that kind of was fortunate to have Dillian Whyte as within Dillian Whyte's stable. Sorry, and I think he is very good. I think it's just hard to work out what sort of level he's going to be on. But yeah, back to your question, I would kind of impressive win last night, but we'll see. I'm interested to see how much of a step up he does take in his next couple of fights. If you consider kind of how the Molina performance was and how the Nick Webb fight started, we'll see. It's another interesting one. It's another career it's going to be very interesting to see which way it goes. 'Cause at some point they're going to be in a position where they want to take a gamble, and that's when it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to look at his sort of potential options and particularly consider the domestic scene in a minute. Before we do that, before the stoppage, there was a moment when Nick Webb was sort of up against the ropes. The ropes were effectively holding him up. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure the rules say that when the ropes are holding up a fighter, that should be considered a knockdown. Greg, just your opinion here. Should the ref have maybe come in and counted that as a knockdown, giving him an 8 count, or do you think the ref was right, or how did you see the end?
Yeah, it was a difficult one because I think that Webb was hurt, but I do believe that he should have been given a count. But would we have forgiven ourselves if he got up and he was probably more hurt than what it looked like, and Wardley went in through a couple of more hard shots? I think if it was potentially a middleweight, he would have maybe got that opportunity. But when it's heavyweights, I think it's one punch away from disaster. So yeah, I would have counted him. I would have let him get back up. Very quickly to touch point on what we were saying about Wardley there, and I don't know if you guys feel the same as well. See, Fabio Wardley uses his jab. He's a different fighter, and he's fast, and he's not going to get caught, and he's going to be in and out of range, but he seems to want to fight these guys. I don't get it, but yeah, to answer your question, I think it should have been a count. I don't think it was a set stoppage there and then.
Eliot, welcome back. Little technical hitch there, but we are back and we are sorted. The only thing you missed out there was that Greg was sort of saying that he would have probably given Babic an 8 count. Babic, I'm talking rubbish. Give him Webb an 8 count. And personally, I agree. I think that Nick Webb would have seen the end of the round. Would it have played out a different way? Would he have? No, I think Wardley had hurt him by that point, and it was probably done anyway. Telling Nick Webb didn't really put up any argument, did he? He sat there when the ref told him it was over. You could just see he took it. So looking at Wardley then, and I plucked out a couple of names from the domestic scene. Obviously, we're not looking at Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte, but how does Wardley do against first of all, the one they were talking about was Nathan Gorman, or how does he do against a Hughie Fury, or how does he do against a Daniel Dubois? Is that too high? And then I thought a really high level test would be a Derek Chisora. Starting from the bottom there for me, Eliot, how do you think he gets off with Nathan Gorman?
I think Nathan Gorman. Right. I think in terms of picking a winner, it was a tricky one. I might edge with Fabio Wardley for that one, but again, really tricky. I just think Fabio Wardley's maybe looked impressive in the last year or so compared to Nathan Gorman. So I'd edge towards Wardley for that fight. But yeah, really good fight, that one.
Greg, that a fight you'd want to see and something you got an opinion on?
I think that's probably, you've just done a bit of great matchmaking. I think that'd be a great fight night for Fabio Wardley. I think if he sticks to his boxing, he beats Nathan Gorman without a problem. Too fast, moves too well. So I think it'd be a pretty straightforward win for him if he fights the right fight.
I can take no credit for the matchmaking. They called out Nathan Gorman yesterday in the post-fight interview, and obviously looking at maybe Joe Joyce, giving up the British title, letting Wardley and Gorman fight for it or something like that. Slightly above that level, then, in my opinion, and he's got a few losses on his record now. But a Hughie Fury, he's big, he's starting to hit a little bit harder. He's changed his style slightly, but he's still an awkward fighter. Is that the sort of challenge that speed can help you overcome, Greg?
I think Hugh Fury might just be a little bit of a step too far for him at the moment. Hugh Fury, I don't think he's as fast as Fabio Wardley, but he's quite elusive and he does look a bit bigger lately and he is hitting a little bit harder. I just think he's got too much experience for Fabio Wardley at the moment. I mean, he's fought guys like Pulev, who we seen was no mug against Joshua, Povetkin, and he was right in the fight with Povetkin. It was very, very close. So I think maybe anything between like Nathan Gorman round about that level is the next step. I think Hugh Fury just might be a bit too far at the moment.
Eliot, we talked briefly about how Wardley's dangerous when he's been hit. Do you think that if he gets hit by somebody like Daniel Dubois, do you think that it's maybe too late to be dangerous then?
Yeah, short answer, 100%. I think Dubois hits very hard, and it's going to be a problem for the majority of the heavyweight division. So yeah, I think just kind of a question who Wardley's been hit by previously. So to go up against Daniel Dubois soon, someone who's kind of as young as him, fast as well. I think that would end in a Dubois stoppage. I'm quite confident of that.
Just final one then. So what do you want to see next from Fabio Wardley? We obviously want him to do well. We want to see him progress and take the right fights. Are we fairly unanimous that Gorman for a British title would be the first choice next?
Yeah, definitely. Great fight for him. Perfect fight at a perfect time. I think he beats Nathan Gorman quite convincingly. So yeah, it's a yes from me.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a big fight as well. It could be a big fight on an undercard or maybe even a main event somewhere. So yeah, whether we do see it or not, I don't know. But no, that's a very good fight and a fight that we could see towards the end of the year, sure.
All right, and coming into the main event then of the evening. So top of the card was Kid Galahad versus Jazza Dickens, the second time the pair have met. Obviously, that got a few mentions last night, that when they fought the first time, they were kids, they were young, they were early 20s. Now they're sort of in their early 30s, and they'd grown into men and stuff like that. Can I put you on the spot? What did you predict? What did you think was going to happen, Eliot? Who did you have down for the win, or what did you have?
So yeah, throughout the week, I did think Kid Galahad on points, and then when I saw the weigh-in on Friday afternoon, I thought he looks a bit drawn, a bit frail almost. Whereas I thought Jazza Dickens looked great at the weigh-in. So I actually kind of thought, I had a look at the odds as I always do, and I actually thought a draw was a decent shout. Wasn't sure kind of how the fight was going to go exactly, but I thought a draw was a decent shout going into it, which is kind of my way of saying that I couldn't really make up my mind when it came down to it. But that was my put it in our WhatsApp groups. That was my official prediction as of fight night.
And Greg, you could make up your mind. And who did you go for?
So my prediction video this week, I'm going to go on a very small rant here, so be prepared. I picked Galahad to win in the last third of the fight or points. I keep getting a bit of stick in my videos lately from guys who are saying, oh, you need to say whether it's going to be points or knockout, etc. Excuse me. See, if you look at betting systems, you can bet for guys to win in rounds 7 to 12 or points, etc. These odds do exist. I'm not just saying, oh, well, it might stop and it might win. I'll be greatly honest with you, Doey. my main fancy was Galahad on points. And the reason being is I thought when they first fought, the two of them, they were there. This time I think it was more there. I think Dickens had come into himself a little bit. He had found his feet in boxing. He was getting better and better. Galahad's been relatively inactive. Josh Warrington lost. How was he going to, he's had one fight since that, I think, before Dickens. And how was it going to look? I just thought that it would be a tight fight, but I thought Galahad would eventually come out in points.
And in terms of how the actual fight played out, then let's jump into the basics of it. Not about, without getting into too much detail about it. Does it just come down simply to Galahad did more work and that's what got him the win? Greg, what do you think?
He's too clever, Doey. I said that in my video. He's just too clever. If you guys go back and look at the beginning of the fight, I remember when I boxed and people done this to me, is the most infuriating thing in the world, but you can't really stop them from doing it. He was standing on Dickens' foot. And the reason why he's doing that is so that Dickens can't move away when he goes to jab him. He's just too clever and too effective. He knows he's got that angle style where you're so slippery, you're comfortable in range. So yeah, I just think he's just too clever for Dickens, and much respect to Dickens because he's a very good fighter in his own right.
Yeah, agreed. And I noted that in one of the VTs before, Galahad was just saying, I'm not exceptional. I think his words were, I'm not exceptional at anything, but I'm very good at everything. And he was like, whatever Dickens can do, I can do it a bit better. For my opinion, for what it's worth, I think that was what it was. He just outworked him, and when he landed more. And some of the spoiling tactics, if you want to call it that, or the old man in, there was, the stepping on the foot, or he held the head a few times, and it wasn't terrible, but he did it enough that he got away with it, and it worked in his favour. And I thought Galahad looked really good. Eliot, you brought up the issue of the weight, and that was mentioned by a lot of people after the weigh-in, that he didn't look really good, and the 10-pound rehydration clause with the IBF and so on didn't really help either. Do you think Jazza Dickens maybe missed an opportunity to just put the pressure on a guy who is weight trained?
Maybe, or I think maybe the fact that he didn't look great at the weigh-in was overhyped by some people, including myself. So maybe it just wasn't as much of an issue as some people thought it was. Maybe it was. We don't really know. But I think Jazza Dickens did the best he could, and I think Jazza Dickens is a great fighter. But whether he was going to try and put more pressure on in the early rounds or not, I think we would have seen the same result, to be honest.
Do you think this is the end of the road for Jazza Dickens? Eliot, we'll stick with you for a second.
I don't think it is. I think he will come again. Like, he's not an old fighter, but I feel like he's had a lot of fights, and he's had a lot of tough fights for someone of his age. I think he'll come again. Whether he will win a world title, I'm not sure I see it happening, but I really hope he does. But we'll see. Like, where he goes next, I don't know. I think obviously he had the Golden Contract tournament, which was, an intense period of his career. Would have had a long, intense training camp for this fight. So obviously looks pretty battered at the end of the fight. So I think it will be a while before we see him in the ring again. Who knows? It's hard. It's really hard to predict. But no, I wouldn't like to predict what direction he goes in next.
I think with Jazza Dickens, you say he's had obviously a lot of tough fights and stuff. I think he's had quite a few careers in his career. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's been chapters of Jazza Dickens, and I'm not saying I necessarily thought he was going to win or wanted him to win. I wasn't torn either way, to be honest. But for him to not win last night, I just wonder if that world title shot would come around again, and if maybe anything else is going to get him up for it and go in again. Greg, what do you think on Jazza Dickens? Do you think that maybe the cut won't have helped him going forward? Maybe he took enough of a punishment last night that he just thinks that, do you know what, I've just had enough. What do you think?
I agree with your points there, by the way, Doey, if I can just point that out. I really do. I feel like I shouldn't do this, but I look into the background of boxing too much, and you look at the financial, and you look at the the reasons that guys have to take fights. For me, the biggest problem with Dickens is he's had to jump, and this is with the greatest respect to guys like Ryan Walsh and that, who I really rate. I think they're good fighters, but let's be honest, he's probably jumping from C negative fighters to B plus fighters, and he's not getting that bridge in the middle to move on. You can't jump from Ryan Walsh to Kid Galahad. With the greatest respect, Ryan Walsh is a really good fighter, but Kid Galahad is an absolute nightmare for anybody. When Josh Warrington was on the up, look what he'd done with Josh Warrington. He probably won that fight, you know? So I don't think it should be the end. I really don't. I think that my biggest problem is I think that is going to severely broke his heart last night, because he was on a run. He was beating guys who are very good fighters. He won the MTK Golden Contract Tournament to then be battered, in a sense, the way he was last night. And it was just that Kid Galahad was very, very good. If I'm looking after Jazza Dickens, I take him back to British level. I let him work his way up again, but keep him active. Then get him out for a European title. Take it from there. But don't make him jump from guys who are good domestic fighters to a guy who is like a serious world threat. It's not fair. How do guys get to prepare for that, you know? So I don't think it should be the end. No, I think it should just go back to a reasonable level and build again. I mean, he's only, the same age as me, 30, 31. So, nah. Yeah. I'd like to see him come again against reasonable opposition.
Yeah, agreed. He's not old. He's got every right to come again. You know, he's respected. He's loved by his fans. Unfortunately, like you say, there are other motivating factors in boxing, aren't there? You know, these guys literally fight for a living. So I'd hope that the people who make the decisions with him are doing it with the right intentions, and that, you know, he gets those right chances. And just sort of finally then, back on Galahad, who obviously looked exceptional. You said it there, Greg. He's a problem at world level. Where next? That's sort of what we've been asked after each of these fights. Where does he go next? Do you know, is it unification? I don't know the mandatory situation. I'm guessing he wouldn't have one straight away. But there's Russell Jr. out there. There's Navarrete. There's Wood, who picked up the WBA regular last week. What happens next? I don't know. I really don't have a clue what he's going to do. Do you guys have any insight, Elliot? Have you got any thoughts on what might come next for Kid Galahad?
Yeah, I think he's got lots. I think he's got lots of options. I think that I'd like to think he would like to fight either Lee Wood or the winner of Warrington. Or if Warrington wins in a couple of weeks, can fight the winner, can fight him again. Whether he wants to give Warrington that shot, because I suppose he wouldn't have to do that. But that's a big fight. I'm not saying it would be the most entertaining fight, but I can see that. I can see that fight happening. But yeah, I think that's what I would like to see. To be honest, I don't really want to see him fight someone that we're not familiar with in his first defense. I think he's too experienced and too kind of good for that. If I'm honest, Kid Galahad's been around for quite a long time now. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, you know, there's nothing like a domestic fight for a world title. I love them. So yeah, if you could fight Josh Warrington early next year, maybe, or fight Lee Wood if that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, Greg, Lee Wood, Josh Warrington, anyone else in mind?
Well, you know, I could change my mind towards the time, but at the moment, I don't think Josh Warrington's getting by Lara. So I think we could probably count that out. I think he's going to get beat again. I just think it wasn't a surprise performance. That guy was like a chiseled, programmed machine. I think he could do that again. To answer your question, I think if he fights Lee Wood, I think that fight goes similar to last night. I think Lee Wood's a good fighter, but I don't think he's clever enough to deal with Galahad. Galahad seems to be at his best when guys take chances and try and go on the front foot with him. It's the way most single fighters look effective. They dance, they move, they get in range, and they know how to move really well. I agree with Elliot. I would like to see a domestic matchup. I think if Warrington does come through, I think that's the natural fight to be made, because there's incentive for both guys. Warrington gets the chance to win the world title back. Galahad gets the chance to avenge the defeat that it probably shouldn't have been a defeat. So, yeah, I think those two, I can't take that away from what Elliot said there. I think that those two are his next best options.
Sounds good. Okay, so unless you guys have anything else to add, this has been Eat, Sleep, Boxing, Repeats review show, Fight Camp Week number 2, 2021. Been joined today by Elliot and Greg. Guys, it's been really good to have your opinions. If anybody's watching this now and you want to leave your opinions or slag us off in the comments down below, please do, but make sure you hit that like and subscribe button before you do it. Yeah, this has been us. Thank you very much for your time. Take care of yourself, gentlemen. We'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.